Mark Mathbane's autobiography, Kaffir Boy, the narrator Mark Mathbane faces many difficulties such as hunger, violence in the times of apartheid. In this period of time, the skin tone determined the future and abilities a person had within a society. In Mark's society, people of darker complexion were separated from the whites, which prohibited any person of power of ending apartheid to experience what it was like for people of darker complexion to live in South Africa. Mark says, as a result, more than 90% of white South Africans go through a lifetime without seeing firsthand the inhuman conditions under which blacks have to survive. Mathbane, page 142. Under South Africa's system of apartheid, their lives consisted of trying to keep food on the table, bills paid, and their passbooks in order to endure police raids which sometimes they couldn't avoid. A passbook in Mark's society was an essential for survival. He says, new passbook in hand, it contained my picture, fingerprints, address, employer's address, age, color of hair, eyes, height, and tribal affiliation, which contained every detail of my life necessary for the police to know my life history upon demand, and I was supposed to carry the damn thing with me every hour of the day and night. Mathbane, page 8297. Since he was born into a poor family, they didn't have many resources or good living conditions. He describes his living conditions as, I was lying on the bed of cardboard under a kitchen table, peering through the large hole of the blanket at the spooky darkness around me. Since they were poor, they only had resources such as cardboard and old blankets. Due to this hard way of life, Johannes has to act beyond his age and look over his family. Throughout the novel, Johannes faces many difficulties such as violence and poverty, which lead him to pursue a brighter future than what he is destined to. Throughout the novel, Johannes is influenced by both his father and a group of rebels who emphasize the ideal that education is not an essential for a decent future, which often tempts Johannes into giving up education and going to find a job. He says, they, like myself, had grown up in an environment where the value of education was never emphasized, where the first thing a child learned was not to read and write or spell, but how to fight and steal and rebel, where the money to send children to school was grossly lacking for survival was first priority. I kept my membership in the gang, knowing that for as long as I was under its influence, I would never go to school. Mathbane, page 3201. Johannes thought this way until he found out his father did not attend school, which is why he became the irresponsible and drunk father he is at the time. When Johannes finds out his father did not attend school, it changes his point of view when his mother says, your father did not go to school, she continued, dabbing her puffed eyes to reduce the swelling with a piece of cloth dipped in warm water. That's why he's doing some of the bad things he's doing, things like drinking, gambling, and neglecting his family. He didn't learn how to read and write, therefore he can't find a decent job. Lack of any education narrowly focused his life. He sees nothing beyond himself. Page 3283. After hearing this, Johannes begins to see clearly and promises his mother he would go to school forever. In the beginning of attending school, he does not quite understand why he is there, which causes him to doubt whether going to school was the right decision. After coming back from his first day, he says, it turned out to be such a nightmare that I had not made the solemn pledge to my mother that I would go to school till kingdom come. I would not have returned for another day. Page 3332. On his first day, he did not understand why he needed to learn things such as reading and writing, and he also thought teachers were rude, which made him not want to return to school. As he continues going to school, he realizes how much he really loves to read and write, which eventually alters his future. After this, his grandmother's boss, Mrs. Smith, begins to send Johannes books that he can find at his school library, such as fairy tales, which is often how Mark discovers his passion for literature. He is later invited by Mrs. Smith to come join his grandmother to work. There, he meets her son, which tells Johannes, I could read it from cover to cover when I was half your age, but I don't blame it if you can. My teacher tells us that Kaffirs can't read, speak, or write English like white people, because they have smaller brains which are already full of tribal things. My teachers say you're not people like us because you belong to a jungle civilization. That's why you can't live or go to school with us. But you can only be our servants. Page 4797. After Mr. Smith's son tells him this, Mark becomes determined to continue his education and break out of the stereotype in which he is expected to be. Johannes chooses a wife's path to success by realizing that gangs will only get him in trouble instead of helping him achieve his goal. He begins to receive scholarships for his high scores and tests, which facilitate his situation of poverty. Mrs. Smith gives him a tennis racket, which is where he finds his passion and dedication for tennis. Throughout the novel, he meets many coaches and tennis players who facilitate his opportunity of becoming a professional tennis player. He changes his name from Johannes to Mark since he is often embarrassed that his name emphasizes that he is of tribal race. He is later cursed by his jealous relatives and neighbors, which causes him to almost go blind and eventually affects Mark's ability to play tennis and to read. People in his society begin to rebel since they are against the school system teaching them a slave language, which causes Mark to become another person. He begins to rebel and is ready to kill until he faces a murder which causes him to almost commit suicide. Even though things begin to get rough for him, he later meets two twin players called the Smiths who open up doors to a college in America. The Smiths contact Mark with many colleges as soon as they begin to send him personal letters offering him acceptance to their college. The only problem was none of them offered a full scholarship which Mark needed. Near the end, Mark is offered a full ride to Limestone, in which he accepts. The only problem is the government denied his request for a passport, which eventually is solved by the Smiths, and Mark is ready to leave South Africa to go to America. At the end, Mark sees his former self within his brother, and even though he doesn't want to leave his family behind, they know it's all for the best. A major theme in this book is fate versus free will. Since Mark is often confused on whether he should achieve his goals of receiving an education and leaving to America, or being the man he is expected to be by his society. This is mostly emphasized when Mark is talking to his principal about who he thinks he is. Mark says, "But many black people didn't understand. They interpreted my love for the English language, poetry for tennis, as a sign that I was trying to be white." Mathebane, page 6297. This quote connects to the theme since even though the fate is to be typical man in the society like his father, he uses his free will to escape that stereotype by using his love for literature and tennis, even though he's considered to be white. This is also emphasized when he faces the harsh reality of apartheid. He says, "Can't we black people make our own laws? Alexander is our world, isn't it? And white people have their own world. My conception of the world of life was wholly in racial terms, that the conception was not mine alone. It was echoed by all the black people that I have to come across. There were somehow two worlds as far as we were concerned, separated absolutely in every sense, but somehow knowing that these two worlds, it had never occurred to me, thought that they were too different as night as day, as separate as east and west. They had everything to do with each other, that one would not be one without the other, and that their dependency was of master and slave." Page 2735. It also triggers instinct drive within Mark to break out of the stereotype in which he's expected to live under. He uses his free will to change this concept. Mark also uses free will to stay out of gangs and to study more in order to excel in school. He says, "My love for reading removed me from the streets, which curtailed my involvement in the gangs." Page 4865. Overall, Mark challenges his fate and uses his free will to break away from the man he is expected to become. A current event is Donald Trump. Event relating to apartheid is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a candidate for the Republican nomination for the President of the United States in the 2016 election. For his campaign, Donald Trump has a plan to deport the 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States, which is a bizarre and impossible objective. In the article, "What Happens to Kids When Their Parents Are Deported?" by CityLab, the editor, Tanvi Misra, explains what really happens to the kids whose parents get deported. Misra says, "Of all the U.S. immigrants deported from 2002 to 2013, 91% are men." This connects to the Kaffir Boy, since in the book, most of the people who get taken away to work in white people's farms are men, including his father. Mark explains that the raids in his neighborhood, and says, "The back-to-back raids went and marked the beginning of the annual Operational Cleanup Month, a month during which hundreds of black policemen, led by white officers, combed through the entire Alexandria ghetto, street by street and yard by yard, searching for people whose passbooks were not in order, gangsters, prostitutes, and black families living illegally in the township." Mathebane, page 442 through 443. In his neighborhood, there are police raids that take away men who don't have their working passes in order, just like immigration services raid Mexican neighborhoods in order to deport those who don't have their citizen papers. Misra explains, when that happens, women are usually in charge of their households, which often leads to poverty. She says, "The parent left behind, the mother in most cases, has to juggle the financial and childcare responsibilities, and is often unable to handle both. Just like in the Kaffir Boy, since Mark's father gets taken away, his mother struggles to find a job to sustain her family. When food begins to starve, and he realizes the circumstances which they are under, Mark says, "My mother began running around the township, soliciting money which had to pay for the rent and to buy food. But very little came of it. A few people tried to help, but the main black people were burdened with their own survival. When it seemed that no help was forthcoming, we resigned ourselves to the inevitable, the eviction and starvation." Mathebane, page 1140. Both connect since statistics have shown that since in most cases the men of the household get taken away, it leaves the mother behind in charge of finding a job, which is often difficult for a woman at the time. The last concept what they both share is since mothers often have to go to work for late night shifts, the older child would have to be in charge of taking care of his brothers and sisters, which would require him to drop out of his current responsibilities such as school. Mr. talks about how since mother can hire babysitters because of the lack of money, kids often are allowed to drop out of school to be sent to live with other family members. She says, "The sudden drop in resources can force families out of their homes, lead them to trust their children with ill-equipped relatives, or cause their children to drop out of school." Just like the article describes, Mark's mother does actually have to go send Mark to live with his grandmother. She is no longer has the basic resources to raise them. When Mark begins to realize their huge lack of basic resources, he says to his mother, "Thinking her rich, I proposed to my mother that we move in with her until my father's return from prison." Mathebane, page 1155. Therefore, both connect since they both require children to move with their relatives who are in better economic standing. Overall, Kaffir Boy connects with the deportation increase in the United States, even though many people don't look at deportation as apartheid. It truly is, since they both separate and cause damage in families. Just like Mark's family, many people come to the United States to live the American dream and hope to live a better lifestyle, just like Mark's family moved out of the tribal reserves to find a better home. In both cases, they face problems with the police raids, fear from being sent back from where they came from, and separation, which makes the deportation today just like the apartheid that supposedly ended 25 years ago.